If you only had a few days left to live, who would you want to call and what would you want to say? These questions reduce us to the most important things in our life and the most important people in our life. On the Tuesday of Holy Week, Jesus only has days left to live. He knows this to be true. And yet on the Tuesday, we can see exactly what Jesus wanted to say and who he said it to. The Tuesday of Holy Week is marked with significant amounts of teaching that Jesus gives to his disciples. In fact, some of the most important teachings that Jesus gives and the most memorable teachings Jesus gives comes on the Tuesday of Holy Week. When we know that the death of Jesus is imminent, we read the teachings with more clarity and more urgency. Jesus is actually asked by the Pharisees about the Old Testament, and he's asked, what's the greatest commandment? And he says this. He says in Matthew 22, verse 36 to 39, it says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" And Jesus replies to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." You know, when I read this teaching of Jesus, when you know that he's coming up towards his death, it's almost like he's saying to his children, listen kids, if there's two bits of advice that I could give you, it's this. Number one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And number two, love your neighbor as yourself. And I don't know about you, but when I read that and I see that Jesus is about to go to the cross, I recognize that Jesus is trying to get some of the most important information to his disciples. That we can do all the right things, but we can do it in a cold way. But God is looking for love. Love for him and love for one another, love for our neighbors. My prayer for you, ECF, this Holy Week is that it would be marked by love. It wouldn't be cold and calculated and ritualistic this week for you, but you would know a deep and abiding love for God in your life, that it would grow in your heart, and that as we come together on Thursday night to take communion together with one another, that we would really know what it means to love one another as Christ loved the church.